And we are live.
And welcome to episode 60 woo woo, of TLC Tech Learn Coffee, now powered by Q. I am your host, Lisa Nowakowski, and I'm a fifth grade teacher in South Monterey County here in California.
And I'm Nancy Minicozzi. I'm an instructional technology coach in Northwest LA County, also in California.
And just as a reminder, we have a 15-minute format because ain't nobody got more time than that.
No, they don't. And tonight's coffee fact is about coffee. Oh, somebody's here. Hi. So, did you know that oil is first and coffee is the second most valuable legally, emphasis on the legally, traded commodity in the world? So if you want to read more about that, we'll put the link in the show notes.
Okay, and tonight's guest is Martin Cisneros. I hope I said that right.
That is correct. Good job. I love it.
I've learned. And he'll be talking to us about English as an additional language and the students in the mainstream classroom. So please go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what you do, things like that.
Well, I've been in education for, I can now honestly say 20 plus years. And I love the fact that I'm far away from the camera because you can't see all the gray. So I love that. Started off as a kinder teacher. And then someone told me when they first started off, they're like, hey, do you know it's your responsibility if you teach first and second grade to teach the kids how to read? That's my little guy, by the way. So say hi, Caleb.
Hi.
And at that point, I'm like, yeah, thank you, but no, thank you. Hey, third grade, how you doing? High five. You guys know how to read already, right? And pretty much went all the way up from third grade to middle school. Taught sixth grade. Then tried myself at seventh grade, really enjoyed it. And then went up, continued going up, taught ninth grade, taught 10th grade. And at that point, someone said, hey, Martin, you know what? I'll be a really great idea. I think you'll make a really great administrator. I'm like, really? And I'm like, okay. So I went and, got my administrator credential, got my master's. And similar to first and second grade, I tried it for 2 years, and then I said, yeah, but no, thank you. So instructional coach is where I found my fit, and really just digging in with English learners. And, at that point, I have to tell my origin story. So, when I first started teaching, my first job, credential job was, of course, you want to give the new guy a 3, 4, 5 combo, right? Because that's what you want to give them. And they said bilingual, but they had that misinterpreted because it wasn't bilingual. It was multilingual. We had 17 different languages being spoken in the school. So even though I can say, good morning, boys and girls, my name is Martin Cisneros. Buenos días, muchachos y muchachas. Yo soy el señor Cisneros, right? 2/3 of my me. So, from the get-go, I couldn't rely on the stuff that I learned in the credential program. What I had to rely was just like, how do we make this happen? How do you teach with kids who don't understand you? And you have to remember, I'm going to date myself now. The year was 1993. Boys and girls, do you remember 1993? Do you remember the tech we were using in 1993? That's right, ladies and gentlemen. This was before the Googles. This was before the internet was hitting there. But we did, and I don't know if you guys remember, both of you remember, but remember in 93 or 94, they had that one time where they would but they would give away computers. Remember that? They would give 3 those gray computers. And I just remember when those things were installed in my classroom, like a moth to a flame, my students would just walk in and just stare at it. And I'm like, okay, there's something there. I had no. Fast forward, 25 plus years later, I call myself the Wild E. Coyote of EdTech because everything that has gone wrong, yeah, this guy right here, right? So, over the years, teaching other kids, and the reason why I'm calling this EAL versus ELL was, I was, Spanish was my primary language and English was my second. Over the years, I had friends. We talked about different ways of how do we prepare kids for this. But the reality is our kids have changed over the years. It's no longer English as a second language. We have a lot of kids coming in, especially here in our wonderful state of California, where now it's English as an additional language. So some kids are already coming with 2 or 3 different languages, and now they're adding, another one. So that's where my head has been, especially over the past 10 years. People always say, Martin, how come EdTech really hasn't taken off? And I go, well, the reality is this, right? First, the first decade between the 90s, we're trying to get the hardware. And then, trying to get access. And then we spent the 2000s trying to get the hardware. And then all of a sudden we got the hardware, we got the software, and then we have internet access. And now the dog has finally caught the bumper. Now what? Right? Now, the point where we're at now, what? So, what I try to do is I try to find strategies globally that people who teach English as a foreign language, who teach English as a second language, English as an additional language, and I try to look at those strategies, hook onto those strategies, and then put my spin on how can technology enhance, right? So I automatically think of blooms, and then we flip blooms around. I try to live on the top, right, on the creating and analyzing, and I allow tech with my students to focus, with the tech, focus on the bottom ones, get that practice in, right? Because that's where tech really comes in. So the shift I try to use now is, how do we see our students as an asset versus as they're not coming in with certain things, right? Because I always laugh, as a kid, and you guys probably understand this, right? As a kid, I was the translator for my parents, right? So we go to school, oh, teacher, oh, okay, Martin, tell your parents that you're doing okay in art, you're really trying in PE, but you're not doing very well in math. So I would translate the first part of that. I just would switch the last part around, because in my head, what I always used to think about is like, you don't know that I do know math, because here's what you don't know, teacher. At home, not only am I translating here, but I'm translating at home as well. I do taxes. I'm in first grade, right? My mom has Tupperware, and I run her empire from home. So, there's certain elements that I tell folks. It's like, no, there was a lot of stuff that I would do, but I was just not getting credit for it. So, I always tell our teachers that, bilingual or multilingual students, we work 4 times as hard as every other student, but only get a quarter of the credit. So, trying to teach teachers, to separate the language acquisition versus the content acquisition, right? Make sure those are 2 different parts. And then how do you do that? And literally in the past 8 years, my whole focus has been, well, how do I teach the mainstream teacher who has never taken any training, no B-clad, nothing? How do we teach them some of the really, quick strategies that we can use that they can start off? So, I always tell folks, first of all, let's just remember that our students are assets. They're not deficient. They're not deficient in any way. Understand that in our wonderful U.S., 1 in 10 are now English learners. Right, 1 in 4 are 1 in 4 here in our wonderful state of California are foreign born, and then we have 400 different languages now, right? 400 different languages that we speak. But understand that 80% of those are Spanish speakers, and then the other 3% Vietnamese and Chinese and so forth. So, those are some quick things I always tell folks. It takes about 7 to 10 years. I repeat, 7 to 10 years to really learn a language. Now, but Caleb, and then so I always tell folks, think about, if you ever taken a language course in high school. Did you either of you take a language course in high school?
Yes, Spanish.
Spanish. So at that point, think about your first year out of high school. If I was to grab you and put you in the middle of Guadalajara, Mexico, how would you do?
I would have failed after the 4 years. I took 4 years of Spanish high school, and I learned all of my Spanish after I moved out here to California.
Right, and that's why I tell folks it takes a while. And I always say, well, how much practice do your students get at school? And this is where the technology hopefully, makes sense for folks. Oh, well, they have the ability to practice more. Of course they do. And that's what you want. You want, you want your students to have not only more opportunities, but different audiences as well. And then just even knowing about, bilingual ed, because of course in education, we love acronyms, right? We have ELL, ESL, ELD, LEP, EFL, right? I could just rap out whatever other acronyms we have. But the reality is, whatever program, you have to figure out, you have to ask questions about, who's in front of you, because ELLs in King City might be completely different than ELLs in Monterey, Pacific Grove or San Jose. So I always tell folks, figure out who's in your class, right? Let's just start off with proficiency levels. What is their proficiency level, right? Here in the state, looking around the internet, you have whether they have 5 or 6, but I always tell people there's about 5 different levels, right? It's about 5 different flavors is what I tell them, from beginning all the way to, they're advancing. But figure out what they do, and then after you do that, after you figure out what they do, it's not that they can't do anything else. I then would suggest to go to WIDA's website and look at the can-do descriptors. Once you figure out their level, figure out what they can do. Right? Because that's going to help you plan a lot better. Once again, so once you do that, and then figure out what their strengths are, what are they good at? What are, we talk about their language proficiency scores, but also find out, what's the level of education, do they have any other brothers and sisters at different levels of education? Because that can help as well. Figuring out what their story is. You have some wonderful kids who come from a different country, who they've already been in school. They already know their language, so they just need that transition. Those are different strategies. Those are different scaffolds that you use versus students by 8% here in the state of California who were born and raised here. Right? Think about that. They were born and raised here, but they're English language learners. So think about the accommodations that you're going to use. So whether you're using supplemental material, if there's no supplemental material, use what's around you. One of my favorite tools that I love, and it's something as simple as a bilingual dictionary, right? Like I tried taking French in high school, and there was no way I was going to be able to pull that one off, right? The third language, and But what I realized was people never taught me how to take notes. People really never taught me how to use a dictionary, because my teachers just assumed, hey, Martin, go, and the rest of the kids, go ahead and let's take notes on X, Y, and Z. I was never taught, right? Let's use the bilingual dictionary for, once again, for the longest time, I've had a lot of friends who are like, no, we're not going to use bilingual dictionaries. They're really awful. And I'm like, wait a minute. We have these things called technology. It's 2018. Let's teach and learn like it's 2018. So one of my favorite tools, my favorite go-to tools as a mobile app is the Google Translate app, right? And that thing is like a Swiss Army knife because it has so many really cool different things. Right, Keelan? And then, so I love it because you can take pictures of your surroundings, right? So I think about newcomers. I think about, students who just come in, they have no idea. You grab a phone, you grab a mobile tablet, and you show them, hey, look, you see this picture of a picture? Click on it, take a picture of something, figure out what the primary language is. Do you know if you swipe your finger, it'll automatically translate it to the language that you speak? Oh, you can't read? Not a problem, because if you hit that little speaker, guess what? It's going to say it back to you. And you're like, what? Right? So if you are a science fiction nerd, like you should be, right? It's either Star Wars or nothing. But if you're Star Trek, it's all right. We're still in space. And I always tell folks is we have that communicator now, right? We can now communicate with 136 different languages on the fly. Right. So when I hear like, oh, I cannot speak to my parents because they don't understand English and I don't understand their language, that's no longer an excuse. Right.
I once ran a conference because I didn't have a translator with Google Translate.
Wow. Look at that.
Sorry.
I hear you. I hear you. All right. So this means we have how much time now?
Well, we have a minute or so. You wrap up your final thoughts.
Okay, we can do this in 2 hours. All right. So, My suggestion is this, right? Really stuff you can start doing, on Monday or tomorrow when you get back to school is modify ideas for modify your instructional ideas for your kids, right? Simplify your language, right? You see what I'm doing? Don't do very few things, do a lot of things. Yes, what I'm doing right now, right? I'm using gestures. Use gestures with English language learners. Break assignments into segments. Chunk those puppies up, right? Check for comprehension frequently. We have cool tools, right? We have recap. We have Flipgrid. Let's get those kids practicing their oral language, right? Model expectations of the finished product. Take your video, record, tell them exactly what you want them to do. Do a screencast, post it up for them. They would love to rewind you over and over again. And guess what? You're not only teaching your students, you're also teaching the parents and the family members at home. Allow some time for use of their first language as well. Research shows, the more that they learn their first language, they can easily transfer that wonderful thing over. Oh, good Lord, I can continue more and more, but all I'm saying is, oh no, I'm going to leave you with one last thing. Hola, muchachos. Hola, amigos. ¿Qué es esto? No, your machine is fine. I have not. What I'm saying is wait time, right? As educators, we're always like, give me the answer really, really quick. And you have to understand that as an English learner, someone who's trying to understand, we're not only trying to understand the vocabulary, we're also trying to understand the content at the same time. So please give us time. Back channels, folks. Come on. Woo! That's all I can give you right now. I have too much more, but if I say anything else, I'm going to go on a different rant. But thank you for the opportunity. And remember, guys, just figure out who's in front of you. If you need more information, come and talk to me. I'll be more than happy to talk to you.
Yes, and all of your information will be on within the show notes, so people can get a hold of you. They can ask you questions, because I know I want to, at some later point, pick your brain about other things as well. So.
Perfect. Well, that was wonderful. And what can I say? Thanks, everybody, for listening. If you enjoyed the show, and of course you did, because Martin was fabulous, please leave us a comment to let us know. We don't have a comment question for tonight, so just tell us what you thought. How are you working with your students who are learning English? Please join us on Monday, September 17th, when our guest will be Benjamin Hartman, talking to us about using Twitter to find your tribe.
Yes, I'm so excited about that. And please don't forget to subscribe to hear more about easy ways for you to innovate in your classroom. If you liked the show, and of course you did, please feel free to rate us and leave a review on iTunes so that more people can find us. The more reviews we have, the easier we are to find. And remember, we are always looking for guests to share the great things that they are doing in their classrooms. So if you know someone who fits the bill, or if you would like to be a guest, please visit tlc.ninja and complete the contact form to let us know. Thanks, and we'll see you in 2 weeks.